Welcome to Chew on Something,
where we chew on something for the taste buds
and the mind.
Thank you so much for joining us on our 7th episode, lucky number 7.
Woo-hoo.
We're in Vegas, so maybe we should play something.
No.
Okay.
That's one thing I can say, that I never had an addiction for gambling.
Yeah.
I mean, you have money, and there's a chance that you could lose it.
Or a chance you could win more.
That's true, but there is a chance that you could lose it. So
yeah, it's a gamble in life and many things.
Yeah.
True.
I'll keep the money I got. Yeah. It's not much, but I'll keep it.
So welcome to our 7th episode. Hey. And this episode will be a continuation of what we were talking about last week, moving on from forgiveness and talking more so about our journey of healing.
Mm-hmm. My healing journey didn't start until maybe about 5 years ago, but it was slowly leading me into the direction of this journey that I'm on now. And I know we had talked about this before when people are like, oh, was there an event, an experience,
definitive moment,
a memory, exactly, where you realized that you were still holding on to the emotions from the past trauma that you experienced? And the answer is no.
Sorry to disappoint. I love how she's like, was there a definitive moment? Sort of an aha? No.
It did sound like I was leading up to it, right?
It did sound like.
Now that I think about it, it did sound like I was
like, oh boy, what is it? No.
I that is true. Sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you guys. No. The answer is no, long story short. But I do know, when I think about it now, there was an experience in my past where I talked about this briefly, about being in a domestically abusive relationship for 5 years. And before that, other past relationships, romantic relationships that I had with men, it was never to the extent of this kind of abuse where it was physical. So this was the first time I was in a physically abusive relationship. And it was physical abuse and it was mental abuse as well. I try to recall what led me to think that I was worthy of that kind of relationship, because I never had that relationship before. Never. As I'm beginning to understand about trauma and how it affects the brain, I realized this was within me all along, but I was doing it in different ways. So when I was in that relationship, I didn't see my worth, and I somehow felt I deserved that kind of treatment because it was treatment that I had experienced as a young child and a teenager. But then, because this was the first time I was in that relationship, I was treating myself in ways outside of a romantic relationship, but with food. For instance, I was abusing myself with food. I think for me, just because I experienced other variants of abuse, whether it was in this kind of relationship or abusing myself with food, and then dealing with other external traumas I was creating for myself. Because there's 2 kinds of traumas. It's called acute trauma and chronic trauma. And acute trauma is an experience that happened to you, but it's not ongoing. And chronic trauma is what we experience, where it's ongoing or consistent, like racism can be considered a chronic trauma because it's ongoing. Gender identity, economic status, that can be considered chronic trauma because of the way a population treats a group of people and how you have to move through this world. So
2 words, equal pay.
Yes.
Still not reality.
And there's this really, really interesting book by this psychiatrist called Paul Conti, and it's called Trauma, the Invisible Epidemic. And I just wanted to read something real quickly. So some of you may already know this, but emotion system is also called the limbic system, so aka the emotion system. So all your emotions, anger, happiness, shame, guilt, those are all considered emotions as well. In chapter 11, it says, our bodies are composed of different systems that accomplish the various functions necessary for life. For example, a system dedicated to movement allows us to walk, pick up a glass of water, breathe, or adjust the size of our pupils to let in more light. And then it says the system I want to talk about in this chapter spans many vital areas of the brain and has the most to do with emotion. Logical matters are important to humans, counting and understanding directions to travel from one place to another, for example, but our experience of life is defined by the limbic system. Logic can fill parts of our story, but the heart of life is rooted in the limbic system, in our joy, pride, sadness, shame, and so on. So then he goes on to explain that scientifically proved that trauma affects the brain functioning. So it physically changes your brain functioning. And this can affect the way that when you experience something, your automatic emotion to that experience. So he said that the limbic system cares quite a bit about the power of emotions. These emotions determine the strength of our memories, but not without bias. And then he goes, this explains why trauma affects our memories so deeply. Our limbic system tries to protect us, but that protection can be colored with fear and shame. Without our logical systems in place, our memories can get twisted into beliefs that are simply untrue. And it's just like really fascinating because, and then just one more excerpt, and I'll let you. TK's like, you're going on and on. We said we were going to go into healing, and I just had like made so many notes and then he said, fortunately, trauma has a lot to say about our limbic system and the effect, feeling, emotion, cassade playing in our lives. Where we go, who we talk to, who we avoid, what chances we take, and what opportunities we shy away from. What we think in our heads repeatedly about ourselves, how we take care of our bodies, what we automatically believe that we wouldn't believe if we stopped and really thought about it. This short list is just the tip of the trauma iceberg. So I think a lot of people don't understand that trauma has a very big effect on the way that your brain is functioning. So if you didn't go through this kind of trauma, then you would be experiencing things in your life in a different way. You would process those experiences in a different way. But because you experience trauma, your emotions to that experience is completely changed because of it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because we definitely do have very different journeys of healing. I can say that I haven't really delved into that side of healing. I've always been aware of being on a journey of healing. It's been very much self-motivated. I haven't gone to outside sources to seek healing, which I'm definitely open to now. I think before in the past, I was just thinking, well, my therapy is always having you to talk to. And talked a lot about talking to someone and making sure that person is equipped to hear the trauma, because this is not a one-time conversation, particularly for me that used to have a partner that didn't understand why I would not open up a lot about my past. Also, too, because I had difficulty wanting to talk about this because I know it's traumatic and there's a lot of traumatic details to hear, and I didn't want to put that on my partner all the time, and that was a big hindrance in our relationship and relationships in the past. That's my biggest hindrance in this journey of healing, is sort of opening up in the way that someone might expect you to open up when you're with them, and not so much because I can't or won't, albeit I didn't. It's because I know that that person needs to be prepared to hear it a lot. And not most people that haven't been through this type of trauma won't understand it. And I'm talking about the chronic type of trauma. This is not something that they're equipped to hear all the time. And probably they don't want to hear it all the time. And that's what's going around in my head. So my idea of journey of healing has always been to talk to someone, which is why it's one of the reasons why we're so close, is because I know that we can talk to one another anytime that we feel the urge. Over the years as an adult, especially my younger years, my idea was not to talk about it so much. But now that I am opening, I just recently released The Shame, I am open to exploring different avenues of healing, thinking about therapy, because throughout the years I've always thought of our relationship as therapy too, as someone that I can always talk to about it whenever and wherever. It's been immensely helpful, and there are no words to describe that type of relationship that we have for my journey of healing. But I think that as I get older, I'm looking to explore more avenues, because I know a lot of people that have been through this type of abuse haven't done anything and just think, oh, you know, it happened as a child, I don't need to talk to anyone. And I totally get that sentiment, because I felt like that for a really long time. So when you said, oh, I have all these things to share, and for me personally, I haven't been on that avenue. But it's something that, hey, I'm learning, you know, learn something new every day. I'm learning myself. I know that a lot of people feel the same as I am, so we can jump on this journey together. I don't have to be alone.
Well, I think like you made some really valid points, because when you talked about not wanting to be a hindrance or a burden and sharing your story in the past, I had those same kind of feelings as well. As I'm moving more through this process of healing, I'm beginning to understand that because we're in positive environments, I've always had you. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, have you ever had therapy? And the answer is no. But I've done outside external things that I'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, you've done a lot of that, right, especially in the way of sort of therapeutic meditation.
Right. So, that have been very conducive to my healing journey. Right. I'm so blessed that I had you, because if I didn't, I 100% know that my story would have been completely different.
The same.
And the fact that I've always had you to talk with, to listen, and to be seen, because a lot of times when people go through trauma, they think they're alone, right, especially chronic trauma. They feel like they're not seen, or if they want to speak their truth, then there's the fear of, will someone believe them, or will they get angry at them? Will they accuse them?
Or will that person get tired of hearing you talk about their trauma as well?
We've also talked about our trauma in a way that, I'm not sure, we've always spoken it in a way, like I think in the past few years, as a part of our past, but not something that's over consuming our present.
Right. Oh, we've always felt trauma is something that happened to us. It doesn't have to define us in a negative way. A lot of people, we talked about this last episode, a lot of people go through trauma. They say, oh, I've been through this trauma, and if I didn't go through this trauma, I'd be a completely different person. But I always say that it's an excuse, and I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I say it with full of kindness, because I understand why you feel like that, especially when you've been through the chronic trauma that you're talking about. Your trauma absolutely doesn't have to define you. It is within your control to define how you wish to move forward in the world. And whether you let the trauma control you, or you control the trauma in a way that's beneficial to you, is totally up to you.
Yes, I agree. But then on the flip side of that, it does make it a lot harder.
Oh yes, I'm not saying it's easy.
Right? Yeah. No, yeah. I know you're not saying that, but I'm just flipping the coin in case someone else.
Let's stop script.
Just in case someone's thinking about this, that it is much harder to move through this world when you have experienced chronic trauma, especially as children, such as TK and I, because as I mentioned before, with the limbic system, your brain is physically changed because of that trauma. So the way that you handle an experience is forever changed because of that trauma, and you're not even aware of it. And it makes it much more harder to see that it's because of that trauma that you are responding and acting and treating yourself in this way, or treating others in that way. Yeah. So even though, yes, the trauma does not define you,
it has shaped you.
It has shaped you, and it is, I was about to say hella. is hella hard. It's hella hard.
Yeah.
But I think once we share more of these stories, because trauma is something that is a constant, it is something that deeply connects many of us.
Right.
And what prevents us from sharing these stories is the shame and the guilt.
And embarrassment. A lot of people will say, oh, you have nothing to feel ashamed of. You shouldn't feel shame. It's not your fault. But again, these are just natural emotions you feel, albeit it's not your fault that you shouldn't have shame. You have it nonetheless. And this is something that I used to feel for a very, very long time. Immense bouts of shame and not wanting to talk about it. Like we said before, I always minimized our abuse. Just said, oh, it's something that happened to us as kids. Always abused it, which was an excuse for me to not deal with the emotions I was feeling as an adult. And I'm still dealing with the aftermath of experiencing child sexual abuse and child abuse. There's issues that affect me as an adult, and I know it's a direct lineage from the trauma that I experienced. I have immense joy and happiness in my life, and I am incredibly lucky to have such supportive family and friends. You still deal with these issues, and I think that I gained strength just by listening to the short stories that everyone else was telling, which I feel really fortunate that they were sharing. A lot of people say that I'm so-and-so age and I'm still dealing with emotions of shame, or I haven't gotten over these emotions of anger. And for me, that was inspiring to hear, because a lot of times too, some survivors feel, oh, well, I'm a certain age, so I should be feeling this now, or I should be over the shame, I should be over the embarrassment. And I say, never kick yourself too much, because these are things that are really difficult to overcome, and you survived. I think that the greatest point in your journey of healing is when you recognize what you need to change. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. It just matters that you recognize it and you start on that path. So I'm a late bloomer and starting on my path of journey of healing, even though over the years I've always been like, I've been on this journey of healing because I'm self-aware, but I've never, I think this is the first time, and since we started the show and started talking regularly for all my years, I really sort of dissected what we went through and talked about in a way that I feel that we've never talked about before. So I feel like doing this show together is therapeutic as well.
Right. And what I want to say is I agree with you. Was trying to get out.
Sometimes you just want to think, but like the simplest way.
Yes. But it's true. I feel the same way. I feel like the show has been very therapeutic, and I've been really surprised over the past years, because when you talked about, you felt sharing your story might be like a hindrance or a burden. I found that because we are in supportive circles, I found that sharing my story also encourages other people to share their stories, and through them sharing their stories, it also inspires me as well. So it's kind of like, I don't know how they say the circle of life, the circle of inspiration or something. I don't know, the circle of inspiration. Yeah.
It's that symbol you're holding up.
Yes. Yeah, instead of symbol, I'm holding up inspiration in its energy form.
Symbol is small, so we have to hold our hands, because that's how much inspiration.
Yes. But, I find that other people feel comfortable in sharing their stories as well.
Right.
I'm really starting to see the power of releasing the shame, because a lot of times when people are releasing their stories, especially for the first time, it's scary, but they're releasing some of the burden that they've been holding on each time they release a piece of their story. And I'm just really seeing what it means to connect with other people and talk about those past traumas. But like we said, it has to be in the right setting, the right environment who you're speaking with.
And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I always knew the power of storytelling, but I had no idea how inspired and touched I would feel by people sharing their stories with us. I think it's different sometimes when you say things, but you really experience it. And I was just so touched, and I was deeply surprised how much it touched me, and in the most inspirational way. So I know that we all about our manners. I'm always saying thank you, but I mean it. I do thank the people that choose to share, and I also thank the people that don't, because I feel sometimes people will say, "Oh, it's good that you're speaking up. It's good that you're no longer silent." And I don't want those who are silent and who aren't speaking up to feel a certain way. I don't want that to culminate with more uh, guilt or shame that they're not saying anything. I think the main takeaway from this is that we just want people to talk to someone that's equipped to help them process these emotions. You don't have to tell everybody, but you do have to be talking to someone on a regular basis that can help you equip that can help you process those emotions. But like I said, I was really surprised by how I would feel hearing other stories.
I think after our food break, I want to discuss a little bit about specifics of what I did personally regarding my healing journey, especially regarding like sound meditation and meditative work, and also the change of my diet as well, because that plays a large part into your healing journey as well. So I definitely
Maybe you should just be by yourself on the second part. I can just like eat the food that you cook.
Anytime I mention something about food, TK is like,
and the weight that I've lost on my journey, and I'm like, the weight I gained on my journey. Okay.
Well, I always like to say it wasn't really about like the physical weight that I lost, but more of like the burden within me that.
Yeah, I'm just teasing.
No,
I'm very proud of the health journey that you've been on, and I'm just, I'll get back there.
Well, she's
getting
back there.
Magic. Well, for some people that are on their budget, there's no magic button. Sometimes you see some celebrities that gloriously shed the weight, and it takes time. But you said I was doing the right way. I'm doing it steady but slowly.
You are doing it the right way. And as I said, that me losing that physical weight, it was more about losing the burden that I had within me. So like the weight was just kind of this physical manifestation of what I was holding on within me, mentally and emotionally, because the weight was just never about the weight. The food was never just about the food. It was these emotions I was holding on to, and what I was trying to distract myself from was really essentially dealing with the past trauma and how that, colored the lens of my entire life, and not the most healthiest choices.
Well, I think because we're emotional eaters, I also eat happy. So I think this is happy weight that I've gained.
Right. But then you also have to think about the food choices, because it's like we both love food.
Couldn't even make a joke, y'all.
And we're emotional eaters.
The health master just came in and was like, look. I was like, I'm just teasing. Well, actually, I was like, okay.
Okay, maybe it's a good time to go into the break.
I think so.
Because then I can go more into the nutrition about food, and, thinking about, treating yourself in this very, really changing the dynamics of how you look at food and what it does for your body.
Change the way that you treat your vessel.
Yes.
Change the way that you treat your vessel.
Yes, exactly.
And treat it healthy.
And that's why we're going to go into break. We have a treat for you.
Hey. And a treat for you is really a treat for me, because I'm the one that gets to eat it.
Well, so do I.
Yeah, but you get to cook it and eat it.
Oh, yeah,
I just
that's
get
right.
to watch it cook and eat, which is my favorite part.
Okay, we'll be back. We haven't thought of a name for it.
Berrylicious.
That's cute.
B to the E to the R to the R-Y. Berrylicious. Why it tastes so berrylicious.
Maybe Beetalicious, because it has beets.
Like beet?
Yeah, beets. Beetalicious. Has beets, coconut, strawberries, And then it's kind of almost going to be like an acai bowl.
Okay.
Beaten for that cocoa.
We'll think of that.
Yeah. That was my attempt, y'all.
Mine was more fun. I come up with some more fun names. No pork for the fork.
Beaten for that cocoa.
Very delicious.
Yeah, that's
Very
cute.
delicious.
Or be delicious.
Like beet sounds like beet, you know? Like other side of beet.
Okay.
Talking about beets.
We'll think about it when we get back. And we're back.
Wow. It's a lot of healthy food.
It's a lot of ingredients, but it's super. This is an easy one to make.
All these berries make me very happy.
Or cocoa for berries.
Yes. Cocoa for berries.
And
was
very
mine?
happy. That was
Very
cute.
happy. And beet for that physique.
She had to get that in.
Let's take a vote.
Well, which one is it? Beat for that physique or berry happy?
Or cocoa.
Cocoa for berries.
Cocoa for berries.
Because it has coconut in it. There's
Right.
like coconut shreds, there's coconut milk, and then there's also berries.
Okay.
Among other things like beets
Okay.
and banana. Okay, let's get into it.
Sure.
Okay. TK's like, whatever, just make it.
I feel like ding, 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 ding.
Anyone recognize that? Dun, 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 dun. What's that? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Anyone can guess that.
favorite movie.
That's one of our favorite movies. If you know what we're talking about, put it in the comments section.
Mm-hmm.
Went with a whole sign language kind of deal,
Yeah.
didn't it? Okay. Anyway, back to what we're making. So we have blueberries, we have sesame seeds, we have chia seeds, beets, protein powder, frozen strawberries. These are non-frozen, so just fresh strawberries, frozen strawberries, bananas that I put in the freezer because, it's really good when you're making like a thicker base consistency.
The fruit to be
For a
frozen.
smoothie. Mm-hmm. Almond milk, coconut shreds, and coconut cream, unsweetened.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. But like, if you look,
But I mean, all the
Yes.
fruit is sweet, so.
but look, taste. It actually has a natural sweetness to it. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's unsweetened because coconut's naturally sweet.
I don't know if I like it by itself, but I'm
Oh,
sure with all
really?
this.
I thought it was like so sweet.
Oh,
Well, hopefully you like it. Maybe my taste buds have acclimated to a little less.
I'm sure once it's
Like,
all
I'll tell
mixed
you.
together, it's going to taste fantastic.
So chia seeds are really good because they're also very like high in fiber. And for those who missed, maybe it was in episode 5, but I talked about fiber and how fiber is really important for our bodies because
Definitely when you're trying to expel some things from your body.
Yes.
Very important.
yes, very good for digestion. Well, this might be a little bit of time for
Nerd alert! Nerd alert! Nerd alert!
But just putting that information out again because fiber is so important for our bodies, but we lack the enzymes to break it down. So, but
I remember.
right, but we
Talked
do,
about this.
but we do have microbes inside our colon.
Those microbes.
Might be a little bit too TMI because we're making food, but it's really important because you have microbes in your colon, and it's basically like a little another species living within you. So when that fiber travels down your
But not like alien, y'all.
no, not like, I mean, almost like aliens because they are a separate, almost like a separate species living within you.
But they won't like eat your stomach out.
No, but
They'll
they
eat good things in your stomach.
right, but they do process the food, so they process the fiber, so it moves through the small intestines, and when it reaches the colon, those microbes are waiting for the fiber because that's what they feed on. That's their food. So they get stronger, and then they reward us with their short chain fatty acids, which are the most rewarding anti-inflammatory molecules in our body. Put the almond milk in first. And I have some strawberries in here with a little bit of the beet juice. And chia seeds also are very high in antioxidants, mineral
A lot
oils,
of fruit is.
and omega-3 fatty acids. But chia seeds are very potent. They can consist of like a very high amount. Like a lot of fruits do contain it, but chia seeds are considered like a power
superfood.
Superfood. So I'll put that in almond milk, and then I'll put the protein powder in. And I put 2 scoops in, so if you have this is 1 scoop per person, so I put 2 scoops of these in. And then I'll add the beets.
Beets are really nutritional. They help lower dementia, lower cholesterol.
Yeah, beets are
protect your heart.
High in antioxidants as well.
But they said not to. The beets. They say beets can cause kidney stones. So if you had a kidney stone before, but you should eat them sparingly.
Yeah, I don't eat beets all the time because I find out sometimes I get like a bit of a reaction if I consume too much beets.
Oh, really? I love beets though, like beet juice with orange juice. Mix those 2 together.
Yeah,
beet and orange juice. Apple, beet, orange juice, and apple.
I love
great.
Beet,
apple, and carrot juice is also another.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like beet, strawberries, and orange juice together. Okay. So now I'm adding the frozen strawberries and the bananas. I put 2 bananas, so 1 banana per person.
Okay.
Milk in, or coconut cream actually. So I'll also put some of the coconut flakes on top. I'm also going to throw some in here. And then this I'm going to leave for the toppings. So this goes on top. So what I'm going to blend all this up. Kind of looks like, Peppa Bismol. It's not, y'all, but it does look like a little bit of Peppa Bismol.
This pink sauce that was going viral on TikTok. This woman that created this pink sauce that wasn't FDA approved.
Oh, really?
And she was using it as a sauce for meat. But then I think that she got her business in order, which is good.
I actually wanted to be a little bit more thicker in consistency, so I should have actually used about like half of that almond milk.
Oh, okay.
Because I want it like thick, and it came out a little bit more
liquid.
Yeah, more than I liked. I made these. So peanut butter, so non-sugar peanut butter, and I have gluten-free granola, coconut flakes, cinnamon, and then you mix it all together and freeze it for about a couple hours.
Oh, okay.
So
it kind of looks like a cookie dough that you get ready to put in the oven.
Right, yeah. I mean, seriously though, you could actually just eat these raw and just would make a really delicious natural kind of cookie, because I tasted it and it's pretty yummy by itself.
Okay.
What I might do is just pop a little more frozen strawberries in here. Now it's a little bit thicker. I prefer it. Do over.
If you make those and just throw them in the freezer for a little bit, do they have to be particularly hard? Because I figured
what happens
when you're eating into them, if you freeze them too long, do they become?
No, that's why you just put them in for a couple hours, or even like an hour.
Yeah,
and
that's
it
what I
firms
mean.
up. So
just enough for it to firm.
There you go.
Thank you.
The cookie did sink to the bottom. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall.
Treasures sink to the bottom, y'all.
That's right.
It's a treasure down there.
I wish it would rise, though. Visually, it would look more appealing.
It all goes down the same way, so that's what I say. Wow.
It definitely tastes like a dessert.
It sure does. This is delicious.
I like the taste of the beets with strawberries.
Yeah, it's surprisingly
good, right?
Excellent. Like I wouldn't be able to tell that there were beets in here. And for some that want the nutrition of the beets but don't want to taste the beets because they may not be a fan, this is a really good recipe.
I really taste the beets though. You don't taste it?
That peanut butter? Wow. Who would have thought?
That could be like another separate recipe if you don't want to.
This
Like
is
the
really-
peanut butter cookie, like the
This
granola.
is delicious.
Thank you, TK.
Oh, peanut butter? Wow. Really surprised how well it tastes.
That cookie is really super fast to make. And then you just pop it in the freezer for like an hour or two, depending how hard you want the cookie. But yeah, especially for me that, I have a sweet tooth, and it's really good to find kind of like a healthy version of something sweet.
What did you say? Just kidding. It's just delicious.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
Wah, wah,
I swear to that. I don't know.
Yes, sis, I'm glad you enjoy it. TK just went all in.
Break.
Yes. All right, well,
Wow. Maybe you just take away the second half, and I'll just be off somewhere finishing this. It's really good.
Thank you, TK. Because you don't want to sit here and watch us eat.
No, you don't. See you soon.
See you soon.
Maybe not. That cocoa for berry made me think differently about berries. I've never been a huge fan of certain berries, but it's a whole new world here when you're venturing on this healthy journey. Things I didn't think I was that crazy about, I'm taking a little look into.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for instance, we're not a big fan of cantaloupe.
Right.
Or melons.
I'm a fan.
But when they are like perfect.
I'm a big fan when they're right.
When it's like the perfect ripeness. Oh
Yeah,
my
I mean,
God.
I love melon. I love cantaloupe.
I do too, but it's so hard for me to find.
It's just very difficult to find it right.
Yes. Does anyone have any tips on how to find the perfect cantaloupe or melon out there? Please leave in the comment section below.
Well, and not even, like looking through. It's just anytime you get it from the market, it's never sweet.
Yeah, a market, a restaurant, when they have the fruit bowls, they try to load it all up with the cantaloupe or the melon.
And it's not
and
sweet.
try to be short on those strawberries, the good stuff.
All right, so we're jumping a little more back into the journey of healing.
TK and I were talking earlier about the limbic system and how the limbic system plays an important part in how you process, experiences throughout your entire life. And because the limbic system, which is AKA your emotional system, trauma colors those experiences and how you will react in certain ways through emotions of anger or shame, guilt, happiness. And
before you could have painted everything blue, but when you go through certain trauma, you might only paint things red.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely right. And because of this, it makes it much harder to not let trauma define your life. Yeah, it is possible not to let trauma define your life.
Or perhaps we should say let it define you in a positive way, because trauma does shape you, but it's up to you to decide how you wish to be defined.
Right. Yeah, because the experiences that you went through
have shaped you.
Yeah, they
Molded
have.
you.
Yes, they have shaped you, and that trauma from your past is a part of your story. But it's a chapter within your story. It doesn't have to dictate your entire story. And there was one part I just wanted to read in this again by Dr. Paul Conti. If you haven't, it's called "The Trauma, the Invisible Epidemic." And
take a look and read
in a book. Reading Rainbow, reading Rainbow, reading Rainbow. Okay. And I felt this was like important to say because he said that the limbic system is not the problem. The trauma is the problem. Trauma is incredibly powerful, but it's not invincible. And the limbic system can also be a potent ally with benign and healing capabilities. By expressing compassion for ourselves and others, and by allowing that compassion of others to take root in ourselves, we can heal from the ravages of trauma and change our lives for the better. I think this is the reason why we always talked about the importance of sharing stories, because to look at us, you wouldn't think that we went through the kind of chronic trauma that we experience. And that's why it's really relevant to share. You never know who you could be helping, but most importantly,
Yourself.
Sharing really helps yourself.
Right.
One of my most potent experiences into this healing journey is I remember when I broke off my 5-year relationship that was very physically abusive, mentally abusive. It was a very violent relationship. Just have, broken up with this person within the 5-year span. I don't know how many times I lost count. And I remember the last time when I decided to walk away for good, no contact, no conversation, I cut it off completely. And I told TK, and TK said she knew for the first time within 5 years that was the end.
Yeah, because you were very peaceful, and it was just sort of a finality to it.
Right.
And you weren't, I think you were more upset that you had been in a relationship for that long and sort of experiencing that domestic abuse. But I knew that it was just a sense of calmness and serenity and finality. And I was your sister. But even when you were going through a lot of those things, I had no idea because you didn't tell me.
Right.
So.
Because there was the guilt and there was the shame attached to it. And I didn't want to tell my sister all the specifics of what was going on in that relationship because then I also felt a lot of shame because I didn't want to tell my sister the reason why I was staying.
And I think that also, too, maybe for another episode, it's very interesting that, albeit we went through very much similar trauma, some things were different, but a lot of it was similar, that we have our own journeys in dealing with relationships, what we put up with and what we didn't. And I thought that even as identical twins, having those experiences were different for us.
Right. The reason why I had subjected myself to that kind of relationship was first because in some way I felt I deserved that kind of abuse because this was all to the past abuse that we experienced as children and teenagers. So in some way,
Did you feel like that when you were younger, that you deserved it?
When I look back on it now, but when I was within it, no, I had no idea.
Okay. Yeah.
But now that I'm processing everything, I realized there was a part of me that believed I deserved to be within that kind of relationship because if I didn't, I would have walked away. And
No. Okay.
Yeah, well,
I mean, for you, yes.
Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
I believe that, I put up with that kind of environment because in some way in my mind, I thought that's what I deserved. It was a harsh reality for me to think that that's what I deserve because now when I look back on it, I was like, Sabrina, what the... And, and I have to speak to myself kindly because that's where the guilt and shame comes in. I have to realize, like, Sabrina, you were still processing and still hadn't even realized the shame that you're still holding on to from a young girl. And it was, as I said, coloring the lens of my entire life and including all of my, relationships. So when
I wasn't mad at you, but I was upset that you hadn't told me.
Right.
The things that went on in the relationship because obviously we have a strong bond and I love you. And yeah, I felt that if I had known, maybe there was something I could have said and there probably wasn't, but you know, at the same time too, it hurts my heart that you were going through all that and I didn't know.
Right. And it's also kind of like self-sabotaging or not wanting to speak your truth, because then you realize when you speak your truth, you really have to look at the reason why you are in this predicament. So you don't want to address those issues.
You don't want to admit it.
So you don't share your story.
Yeah,
you don't tell your loved ones.
Yeah. I'm not upset now, but I
Right.
remember being upset when you told me. Not angry, just more so upset that I couldn't have helped or that I didn't know about it, so I could have helped. Yeah.
So the reason why I share that with all of you is because in some way I felt also as well that I would maybe somehow rectify my past, because in this ex-partner of mine, there were a lot of elements that reminded me of my father that I saw within him. So in some way, by me staying in this relationship, and even though it was violently abusive, I was fighting back. And I think in some way, because I couldn't fight back as a young girl and a young teenager, by me putting myself in this situation that was very similar to the violence I experienced as a child and teenager, but this time I could fight back as a woman. I looked at that whole relationship as something very different. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not a victim because I'm fighting back. He's hitting me, but I'm fighting back. I'm not sitting in the corner. I'm not crying. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that either. But in my head, this is how it made sense for me to stay in this relationship and be like, oh, well, you know, I'm fighting back. The things
that you didn't have control over as a child.
As a child.
You did have control.
Right.
It gave you some semblance of control, even though it's the type of control that you shouldn't have been in a position.
Right. And I was inflicting all of these emotions that I had wanted to inflict on my father now onto this ex-partner. And I told TK, and I walked away for the last time, and this was 5 years later. This is why I said TK and I always talk about how important environment is. So after that, then I knew for my next relationship, but first of all, I knew that I was not ready to be in a relationship after I ended that relationship. So it took a good 1.5 years to myself, to be by myself.
Yeah, I had an encounter with a violent boyfriend in my early 20s. And as soon as he showed a sign of it, I was out there. But, you know, when I say we had different things in relationships, I put up with other things I shouldn't put up with in my past relationships.
Right. For instance, for me, cheating was my end all, be all. So if, you know, I knew someone was cheating, I was out. No questions asked.
Yeah. But I remember like the first guy who was violent and he showed it and he pushed me. We were in a subway station in New York and he shoved me. I shoved him back. I just remember saying, oh, you know, that's it, and storming off. Because he was like really grabbing me and shoving me. And I remember these two older women in the subway. And I'm like, that's right, girl. You don't let him put his hands on you. And I remember I was doing Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And then I said, that's it. He got on his knees. He begged for forgiveness. And I said, okay. I figured second time he did it, then I was like, yeah, I'm done. And I cut off all contact and never saw him again. I put up with other stuff that I shouldn't have put up with in relationships. Like one of my exes was a cheater or, you know, emotionally talking to someone else. And these are things that I put up with and said, oh, okay, well, you know, believing basically the fabrications that they were telling me. I get to a point where like, okay, enough is enough. I have my own issues in dealing with these relationships, which I know stems from my sexual abuse. I know that relationships I've had in the past have been affected. Some really good memories with partners as well. So it hasn't been so much a hindrance where I'm unable to have a good connection with someone. But it is about finding someone that can understand sort of the trials and tribulations of being on this journey and experiencing child sexual abuse. And not every partner will understand that, nor will they understand sometimes how much you need to talk about it, which is why it directly affected my last relationship, because I didn't nearly talk about it as much as I wanted to talk about more so because I was concerned about the person hearing it, and I didn't want to burden them, and I didn't open up about a lot of things, which affected the relationship. But you live and you learn. Yeah. You live and you learn. I don't feel guilty for not doing it because this is a learning process.
Right. Depending who your partner is, they could be experiencing their own trauma that they haven't even opened up about. Mm-hmm. So it could be like also triggering to them in a way that it makes them reflect on their, past trauma. So they might react in a way to you that has nothing to do with you opening up and sharing with them, but they're correlating it to their own.
It could. I think that's like relationships not working. It's best to have alone time. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a person that needs to be in a relationship. I enjoy me.
Yes.
I'm a lot of fun.
Yes.
And, I enjoy time with, obviously, my best friend mm-hmm. and my mom and my friends. But I'm not the type of woman that needs to be in a relationship.
Right.
Also, we should probably have a separate episode on dating because that is quite daunting.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly as TK said, I feel very happy by myself. I don't judge anyone. There's people, they just love to date. And that's great. But for me, I feel immense joy being by myself or with a partner that I feel that it's going to be like a lasting relationship. Mm-hmm. So when I had left that abusive relationship, which is what I was getting around to, environment is conducive towards your healing journey. Because what happens is when you surround yourself with positive, supportive, inspiring people, it's not like this person telling like, you should do this, you should eat healthy, you should work out. What happens is that they're inspiring you through their own lifestyle. Right. So what happens is when I took that 1.5 year break to myself, I also started addressing my issues with food, because this is when I had gained like almost over 50 pounds was during that abusive relationship. So when I left that relationship and then really started to think about why I felt I needed to subject myself to that kind of abuse for so long, I started looking at other areas in my life, and another major area for me was food. So speed forward 1.5 years later, and then I wind up meeting, this incredible man that came out of the blue, really. And I don't want to say it's because I wasn't looking for it, because I was ready to receive. I met him on a dating app, so I was looking for him. You know how they say, it comes when you're not looking for it. Look, sometimes you gotta look. Time is not on your side. You gotta be investigating, doing your research. Sometimes you have to look. After 1.5 years, I was ready to, go back out into the dating pool. And yeah, that's actually a really good episode too, because I have a lot of safety dating tips on like dating apps. And
you gotta look.
Yes.
You gotta research.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do background checks.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get fucking health check
tests. Yes. Yep.
Some madness.
Mm-hmm. I was an investigative reporter.
A lady just stay at home and read a book.
Yeah. But when I met this incredible person who was very supportive, it was in a time in my life when I was really starting to work on myself and process a lot of things. So I realized the more that I was beginning to really work on myself in a way that was really conducive to the healing journey that I needed to be on, that's when all these other external factors started to pop up in my life. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't by coincidence that it showed up. And through this person, that's when I was introduced to sound meditation. And I have to tell you that the sound meditation really sped forward my healing journey in ways that I could never have imagined. To tell you briefly, on my first session, because I've done many sessions afterwards, but my first session, and I'll talk about it on a later episode because I realize we're running out of time.
How many sessions I've done.
Yeah. It's a session that we have to do together because she was distracted. The first meditation that I did, and tell on a later date because there's actually a very funny story that goes with it and my whole thinking process on what sound meditation meant. And I was like, look, you're going to pay all this money hear sounds and I don't know, somebody banging on some pots and pans. I just was very ignorant to what sound meditation was, what it is, how transformative it is, how much hard work it is because you are taking in other people's energies, musician, professor facilitating these sound meditations, and the wealth of knowledge that goes into connecting how music, the certain kinds of music can really affect the brain waves and healing.
Hey, well, it's one of the reasons why I love music
Yeah.
and writing.
It's just so fascinating, so much information. But long story short, I had my first sound meditation, and by the end of the experience, I was, as I said before, I was just releasing tears, and it wasn't like a boohoo cry, which is also fine too, but it really felt like my body was just releasing all of these,
Floodgate.
it was releasing all these tears that I was holding on for decades and decades. Because, you know, as we shared before, our father told us never to cry. If you cried during the abuse will only be more violent. So we were taught at a very young age not to show our true emotions. And because of this, I released all these tears. And yes, TK said a floodgate, and that's what happened. A floodgate came. I felt the most relaxed that I had ever felt my entire life. Like my body, because I hold a lot of stress here and a whole lot of stress here. I was completely relaxed. It felt like I got like a 8-hour massage, because that's how long the sound meditation was. First time I understood that I never just sat by myself for 6 to 8 hours without any external distractions, no food, no entertainment.
Well, the music.
Well, the music, but it was a certain kind of music that helps you to focus just on the sound, so there's no words. So you're just focusing on the sound of the music. So really, it takes you into the state where for the first time, memories were popping up about our past trauma that I had never thought about ever. Me coming and initiating a conversation with you about our past for the first time ever was because of that session. You know, because we talked about it. We never talked about, we knew we were going through the abuse and we had each other and we talked about it later. Now we talk about it all the time. But, you know, for years and years and years, we never mentioned anything about it to each other. During that sound meditation, it really opened up all these blockages I felt that was within me, and also too my blockage regarding how I was treating myself physically a lot regarding emotional eating as well. And then after that, many ceremonies after, it's just been more and more conducive to this healing journey. For those who are looking for books, I have another one by Dr. Gabor Mate. I love his work, and this is in the realm of Hungry Ghosts, and it's all about like addictions and understanding addictions, because a lot of people that experience trauma have addictions. And there was like one quote that he was saying, he was giving like numbers regarding addictions in the US. And he was saying, like, according to the figures by Norm Stamper, the number of Americans who have used illegal drugs stands at 77 million. And then he says the U.S. Department of Justice reports that the number of prisoners has tripled from 139 per 100,000 residents in 1980 to 476 per 100,000 in 2002. And then from 1980 to 1999, the annual number of Americans arrested for drug offenses has nearly tripled from 580,000 to 1,532,200.
We gotta take into account what kind of drugs people are being arrested for.
Right, but
weed.
Right, but he's talking about a lot of times people try to heal their trauma with drugs, and he goes into a lot about like opiate addiction and how we shouldn't be arresting and incarcerating these people, but what they need is rehabilitation and healing from their trauma. We talk about addictions. Addictions are kind of like a shopping addiction, or it might not be looked at as harshly as a heroin addict.
Opioids addictions.
Right, yes.
You know, definitely depending on communities. Because
Right.
obviously we know that marginalized communities have been ravaged.
Yes, and he talks
Violence.
about that, which is the reason why I love like Dr. Gabor Mate's work, because he talks about like communities and indigenous communities, communities of color that really need help and healing within because of all the traumas that they experience, not only acute traumas, but the constant chronic traumas
of racism.
of racism. So, but back to real quickly, the reason why we had talked about sharing our stories and connection, and the reason why this sound meditation was so healing was something that I never pictured myself doing. To me, was like a kumbaya moment, around the fire or something. I never thought like this kind of work would be conducive to my journey, but it was only inspired because I started to change my environment. And I was introduced to it because I met this very loving and supportive person. That's what Dr. Paul Conti says. He's like, I just want to reiterate here, that we're not meant to face trauma alone. To that end, it's important to rely on allies, family, friends, doctors, therapists, pets, support groups, medicine, gardens, you name it. He said, by this point, I hope I made the togetherness aspect of trauma work clear. It's crucial that we develop the inclination to rely on the wisdom and kindness of others, and I've learned not to underestimate the power of the warm hand and the written word. Other people remind us of who we are, help us uncover our true maps, and advise us as we chart new courses to where we want to be in life. And he said, with that being said, we also need to learn to be better allies to ourselves. This can also take many forms: positive self-talk, thoughtful self-care, self-confidence, self-assertion, and the habit of making well thought out choices for our health, careers, and the people we spend time with.
Mm-hmm. That's why I've also been such a big proponent of self-love and self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about it sort of in this very superficial way, but it's meant for something much more deeper.
Yes.
And substantial.
Yeah, exactly. We ended there?
Yeah.
I think for us, like, this is definitely an ongoing conversation, because I feel like there's so much more that we want to share on this, and especially I know personally I have so many like personal experiences that I want to share. And I know we're wrapping this up and probably going a little bit over, but just real quickly, TK, can I share something real quickly? It'll be quick. TK's like, oh my God, TK is editing this. So I make the food and TK does the hours of work of editing. She does an incredible job. She's so amazing at it. So TK's like, look, you got to make this quick because you're going overtime. It's going to take a real long time to edit.
Yeah.
Okay, so just real quickly, during a ceremony, I won't share specifics of the story, but within this circle, we were all sharing our stories after the sound meditation, which I find is one of my favorite parts of the sound meditation, hearing other people's stories, just hearing people open up. And I really feel connected through through stories. And some people share very personal stories of like their past, or some just explain what happened to them during the ceremony. But I remember one time feeling very connected to this older man who was a war veteran for like 15 to 20 years. And I remember he was sharing his story, and I just felt a very deep connection with his story. And then I had shared a bit of my story, and then I remember at the end of the ceremony I was like, oh, I'd love to get a chance to talk to him, but everyone's kind of going around and like talking to each other, and I was like, and it kind of just slipped my mind. And then I felt a tap on my shoulder, and he just wanted to say that he felt very connected with my story. Wow, because I was thinking the exact same thing when he was talking. This is the reason why I say it's so powerful that we share our stories.
And though your stories are vastly different,
and very vastly different,
it's something how that you still both felt very connected to each other's stories.
Right? Because honestly, I felt like we went through war for over 10 years with the kind of trauma we experienced. So maybe, there was some kind of connection.
The heaviness of the type of trauma that he experienced, that we experience, is similar, although the actual trauma is vastly different.
Right. But, for me, I just felt the similarity was that because I felt really the kind of trauma that we went through, it was almost like we were at war for 10 years within ourselves and with the person that we were dealing with. And though it's not the same kind of trauma by any means, the body can't dictate the specific trauma that you go through, the body just processes the pain, so your limbic system can associate, like, this person went through war, this person was sexually abused for over 10 years every day of their life and violently abused. But the body processes the pain and, in a very similar manner. What's different is how you process the trauma and heal from it. That's what can be drastically, different from one story to the next. So I feel the more that we share our stories, the more that we can be connected and also realize there's a way that we can push through it and thrive and survive.
Yeah, that's why I say that I'm proud of the way that we push through the trauma with, joy and happiness and forgiveness, because it's not the easiest thing to do. But I think that it's very easy to sustain it once you do. If you've had such a traumatic past that you can't find joy and happiness, and that can't be the things that rule your life. They can be, and but it takes a while to get there. Well, I have plenty of joy and happiness. I'm still on this journey of healing.
Yeah, so
I have a lot of things to learn.
Yeah, me too.
A lot.
I'm still learning too. I have a lot to learn too.
But I said that I don't look at the journey of healing as having an end date. I look at it as a companion, and a companion that will be with me for the rest of my life. And when you have a companion that will be with you for the rest of your life, it should be a good thing. And that's the way I look at a journey of healing. Because it will be like, oh, I can't wait till year 2 are healed. Or to me, it has no end date. Because for me, a journey of healing can always improve my life in the most beneficial way. So why would I think that had an end date? You can always improve yourself.
Right.
It's applicable to anything. So that's the way I look at healing.
Exactly. It's a life journey.
Yeah. A life journey.
A life journey.
Choo choo. Beep beep. You get off at certain stops and you hop back on that journey of healing and go on to the next stop.
Was it choo choo?
Beep beep. I'm certainly dressed for it. Like I'm ready for a disco. It's just time to wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah. Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And we hope that, those who are on that journey of healing will join us, because we're still exploring. If you have recommendations, anything that you want to offer to say what helped you that we haven't tried, we'd love that. We'd love to hear feedback.
Yeah. I mean, I have some excellent books to recommend too. Like The Body Keeps the Score. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I have nothing. But, I'm open to hearing everything. Yeah. I'll be honest.
Holotropic Breathing by Stanislav Grof.
I mean, if we're going to talk about social injustice and racism, then I have plenty of books to recommend on that. Plenty of books.
That's another episode. It'll probably be like 6 parts.
Yeah. But the healing, yes.
Yes.
You recommend the books.
Dr. Gabor Mate speaks a lot about,
Racism?
about colors of community, indigenous color communities that about the chronic.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we're going to end it here, and then 15 minutes later. Okay.
Story of our life.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
We truly mean it and appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts.
Yes, and we'll see you next time on Chew on Something.